Loneliness is a heavy companion. One that often arrives without warning and lingers like an unwanted shadow. It's a profound feeling. One that can transform the world around us into a cold and desolate place. The silence grows louder. The emptiness more vast. And the isolation feels suffocating. In our modern world, where social media offers a constant stream of connection, we are ironically left feeling more disconnected than ever. True, deep connection, rooted in empathy, understanding, and compassion, feels harder to come by. And often, we find ourselves yearning for a kind of connection that seems beyond reach. But loneliness is more than just being physically alone. It is a state that arises from a profound emotional disconnection from others and, more crucially, from ourselves. We carry within us a sense of being apart from the world, from our own experiences, and from the people around us. In many ways, loneliness is a deep, internal fracture, one that disconnects us from the wholeness of our existence. And while loneliness may sometimes feel like an impenetrable wall, the truth is that it is not an inherent condition of the human experience. It is an illusion created by our minds, a transient state that is not permanent. In Buddhism, the experience of loneliness is viewed not as a fixed or unchangeable state, but as something that arises due to attachment, the attachment to our thoughts, to our emotions, and to our mistaken belief in a separate self. The Buddha's teachings offer us a profound insight. Loneliness is a reflection of our mind's tendency to cling to the idea of separation. This clinging creates a sense of isolation, where we perceive ourselves as disconnected from the world, from others, and even from our own inner peace. However, when we begin to cultivate mindfulness, we begin to see this illusion for what it is. Through the practice of meditation, we realize that we are not alone, for we are all part of the same interconnected web of existence. When we allow ourselves to open up to the present moment, we discover that loneliness is not something we must fight against, but something we can transcend. In every moment of solitude, there's an opportunity for connection, not just with others, but with the deepest parts of ourselves. This is the essence of Buddhist practice, to recognize that we are not isolated beings, but interconnected with all that is around us. By shifting our awareness and cultivating compassion, we can transform loneliness into an opportunity for profound healing and growth. This guided meditation is designed to help you move beyond the isolation of loneliness and reconnect with the sense of unity that resides within us all. Drawing from Buddhist teachings, it invites you to explore the nature of your feelings and recognize that even in the moments of deep solitude, you are not truly alone. By practicing mindfulness and compassion, you can embrace the healing power of the present moment. And in doing so, unlock the possibility of connection, not just with the world around you, but with the most authentic part of yourself. As you journey through this meditation, remember that you are not isolated in your experiences. Loneliness, though painful, is a shared human experience. And as you open your heart to this truth, you begin to heal. You begin to reconnect. and you begin to realize that the love and companionship you seek are not outside of you, but already within you, waiting to be acknowledged. Now, let us begin this journey together, with an open heart and a compassionate mind, ready to embrace connection and healing. The Buddhist perspective on loneliness, embracing the illusion of separation. In the quiet moments of solitude, loneliness often emerges like an unwelcome guest. It arrives unannounced, filling the space with a sense of isolation, as if we are disconnected from the world and everyone in it. Yet, within the Buddhist tradition, loneliness is understood not as a fixed condition but as a transient experience, a result of attachment and the illusion of a separate self. The Buddha's teachings reveal a powerful truth: the root of our loneliness lies in the mind's attachment to the false belief of separation. We often define ourselves by our thoughts, emotions, and experiences, believing that we are solitary beings in a vast and indifferent world. In doing so, we create an image of ourselves as separate, as isolated from others and from the flow of life around us. But this perception is an illusion, a distortion of reality that clouds our ability to experience the deep interconnectedness of all things. At the heart of Buddhist philosophy lies the profound teaching of anatta, or non-self. According to this teaching, the self that we so strongly identify with is not permanent or fixed. It is not a solid, unchanging entity but a fluid, ever-changing process. We are not separate beings, but part of a greater whole, interconnected with every person, every experience, and every moment. The feeling of loneliness arises when we cling to the illusion of a permanent, isolated self. When we believe that we are separate from others, we create a barrier between ourselves and the world around us, leading to feelings of isolation and disconnection. However, the Buddha teaches us that the truth of existence is impermanence and interdependence. Everything, including our thoughts and feelings of loneliness, is transient. Just as a wave in the ocean rises and falls, so too do our emotions. The feeling of loneliness is like a wave. It may rise in our minds, but it will eventually recede. It is not permanent, nor does it define who we are. When we begin to practice mindfulness and meditation, we start to peel back the layers of this illusion. We observe the passing nature of our thoughts and emotions, including loneliness, without identifying with them. In doing so, we begin to recognize the interconnectedness of all beings, and the profound truth that we are never truly alone. Buddhism teaches that the root of suffering, including loneliness, is attachment, our clinging to ideas of a fixed, separate self. When we release this attachment and embrace the reality of impermanence, we can begin to let go of the isolating thoughts that keep us locked in loneliness. Instead, we can open ourselves to the present moment, recognizing that our sense of isolation is only a temporary mental state that is not who we truly are. In this space of awareness, we begin to feel a sense of unity, of connection, not just with others but with the very fabric of life itself. The realization of non-self is not just an abstract concept to be understood intellectually, it is a living, breathing truth that we can embody in our daily lives. As we deepen our meditation practice and cultivate mindfulness, we start to experience the interconnectedness of all things. We begin to see that our loneliness is a reflection of our attachment to the idea of a separate self. And that by letting go of this attachment, we create the space for true connection to emerge. Through this process, loneliness begins to lose its grip on us. The more we practice mindfulness, the more we recognize that we are part of a vast, interconnected web of life. The boundaries that once seemed so rigid and isolating begin to dissolve. And in this space of interconnectedness, we find that we are never truly alone. In the Buddhist view, the solution to loneliness is not found in external connections, but in the realization of our own interconnectedness with all beings. As we awaken to the truth of impermanence and non-self, we begin to release the attachments that keep us trapped in the illusion of separation. And in doing so, we free ourselves from the suffering of loneliness, embracing the truth of our interconnectedness and the deep sense of connection that resides within us all. This insight from Buddhist philosophy offers a profound shift in how we approach loneliness. Instead of seeing it as a burden to bear, we begin to see it as an opportunity for awakening, an invitation to let go of the illusion of separation and embrace the truth of our shared existence. Through mindfulness, meditation, and the practice of non-attachment, we can transform loneliness into a gateway to deeper connection, compassion, and peace. Mindful awareness, the first step toward healing. Loneliness often feels like an insurmountable weight, a shadow that follows us wherever we go. In these moments, the mind tends to spiral, feeding itself with thoughts of isolation and despair. We may find ourselves believing that our loneliness is a permanent condition, something that defines who we are. But in the teachings of the Buddha, loneliness is not a fixed reality, it's simply a passing experience, one that we can transform through the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the first key to healing. It is the practice of bringing full, non-judgmental attention to the present moment. In the context of loneliness, mindfulness allows us to acknowledge our feelings without becoming entangled in them. Rather than running from the discomfort of isolation, we can simply be with it, observing it as it is, without attachment, without judgment. This awareness creates a space in which we can begin to shift our relationship with loneliness. Instead of letting it define us, we learn to see it for what it truly is, a temporary experience. A feeling that arises and falls away, like any other passing thought or emotion. In Buddhist practice, mindfulness is often compared to being a witness to our own mind. Imagine standing on the shore of a vast ocean, watching waves of thoughts, feelings, and sensations rise and fall. You are not the waves, nor are you lost in them. You are simply observing. Similarly, when we practice mindfulness with loneliness, we are not defined by the feeling of being alone. Instead, we become the observer of it, watching as it comes and goes, like a cloud drifting through the sky. This perspective allows us to disidentify from the emotion, preventing it from becoming our entire reality. The power of the breath. One of the most powerful tools in mindfulness practice is the breath. As we breathe in and out, we anchor ourselves in the present moment, away from the stories the mind spins about the past and future. When we are caught in loneliness, our minds often become consumed by memories or anxieties, regrets about the past or fears about the future. But the breath is a constant companion, always with us, always here, guiding us back to the present. Through deep, mindful breathing, we can create a space of peace within ourselves. With each inhale, we bring in fresh energy, life, and possibility. With each exhale, we release tension, anxiety, and the stories we tell ourselves about being alone. This simple practice helps us return to the truth that our sense of separation from others is a temporary illusion, and that in the present moment, we are whole, complete, and connected. Letting go of attachment to the story. In many ways, loneliness is a story we tell ourselves. We attach a narrative to our feelings, believing that because we are alone, we are unworthy, unloved, or incomplete. This narrative can trap us in a cycle of suffering. But mindfulness teaches us to let go of these attachments. Through meditation, we can observe the stories our mind creates without becoming consumed by them. We can see the story of loneliness for what it is, just a passing thought. The Buddha often spoke about the impermanence of all things. Just as the body is not static, neither are our emotions. Loneliness, like all emotions, arises and fades. When we let go of the need to cling to the story of our loneliness, we open ourselves to the possibility of connection, healing, and peace. The path toward freedom. Mindfulness helps us break free from the prison of loneliness by teaching us to live fully in the present moment. Through mindful awareness, we learn that we are not defined by our emotions, our past, or our fears of the future. We begin to see that loneliness is not a permanent part of who we are, but a transient feeling that we can observe and release. As we continue to cultivate mindfulness, we become more aware of the interconnectedness of all beings. We begin to recognize that our feelings of isolation are often born from the illusion of separation. In reality, we are all connected by our breath, by our shared experiences, by our common humanity. In every moment, there are countless beings on this earth who, like us, are longing for connection, for love, and for understanding. When we open ourselves to the present moment with mindfulness, we not only heal our own loneliness but begin to recognize the shared experience of all beings. This is the essence of Buddhist practice, to be fully present, to observe without attachment, and to release the stories that cause suffering. As we practice mindfulness, we begin to uncover the deep peace and connection that reside within us. Through this process, we realize that we are never truly alone, we are part of a vast, interconnected web of life. And we are always connected to the source of love, compassion, and wisdom that exists within all of us. Reconnecting with the self, a journey of self-compassion. In the depths of loneliness, we often find ourselves disconnected, not just from others, but from our own hearts. We may feel isolated, unworthy, or undeserving of love. And these thoughts reinforce the belief that we are separate from the world around us. But the true path to healing begins when we reconnect with ourselves, not as isolated individuals, but as part of a vast, interconnected whole. The Buddha's teachings offer profound guidance in this journey, inviting us to rediscover our inherent worth and embrace self-compassion as a transformative force. The practice of self-compassion. Buddhism teaches us that self-compassion is not a luxury, but a necessity. It is the foundation upon which we can build a life of peace, connection, and understanding. When we are overwhelmed by feelings of loneliness, it can be easy to fall into self-criticism, to tell ourselves that we are not good enough or that we are alone in our suffering. But the Buddha's wisdom offers us a different way of being. He taught that compassion should begin with ourselves. We cannot fully offer love and compassion to others if we do not first cultivate it within our own hearts. Self-compassion is not about self-pity or indulgence. It is about recognizing our own humanity and treating ourselves with the same kindness and care that we would offer to a dear friend. Imagine how you would comfort someone you love dearly who is struggling with loneliness, how you would remind them of their worth. Encourage them to be gentle with themselves, and offer your presence without judgment. This is the kind of care that the Buddha encourages us to offer ourselves. When we practice self-compassion, we stop demanding perfection from ourselves. We begin to accept our flaws, our vulnerabilities, and our struggles. This acceptance is not about resignation but about acknowledging our shared humanity, the fact that we are all imperfect, and that in our imperfection, we are worthy of love. Healing through connection. The practice of reconnecting with ourselves through self-compassion leads us to a deeper understanding of our connection to others. In Buddhism, the interconnectedness of all beings is a core teaching. We are not separate, we are part of a greater whole. The Buddha likened our lives to the ripples on the surface of a pond. Our actions, our thoughts, and our intentions touch the lives of others. Just as the smallest pebble causes ripples that reach far beyond where it falls. When we begin to embrace ourselves with compassion, we open the door to experiencing the world in a more connected way. We realize that we are not alone in our suffering. Everyone, whether they are close to us or strangers, shares in the universal human experience of pain, joy, loneliness, and love. In this understanding, our isolation begins to fade, replaced by a sense of belonging to something much larger than ourselves. Through this practice of self-compassion, we start to heal the wounds of isolation. As we treat ourselves with love and care, we begin to feel less like we are fighting against the world and more like we are gently flowing with it. The wounds that once seemed insurmountable begin to soften, and the barriers that kept us separate from others start to dissolve. A Buddhist story of compassion. To illustrate this journey of self-compassion, let's look at a story from Buddhist tradition. The Buddha, upon attaining enlightenment, encountered a young man named Sudina, who was struggling with deep feelings of guilt and self-judgment. Sudina felt unworthy of the Buddha's teachings because of past mistakes. He believed that because of his sins, he was separate from the compassionate nature of the universe. The Buddha, understanding Sudina's suffering, did not rebuke him for his guilt. Instead, he gently explained that compassion is universal, and it begins within the self. He taught Sudina that just as a mother would care for her sick child, so too must we care for ourselves in our times of distress. The Buddha's words helped Sudina to release the weight of his guilt and to begin the journey of self-compassion, embracing his inherent worth. Conclusion: embracing our inherent worth. Loneliness and isolation can be profound challenges. But through the wisdom of Buddhism, we are reminded that these experiences are not permanent conditions. They are passing states that can be transformed through mindfulness and self-compassion. By reconnecting with ourselves and embracing our inherent worth, we begin to heal the wounds of isolation and experience the deep, unshakable truth that we are all interconnected. In moments of loneliness, remember that you are not alone in your experience. There is a vast, interconnected web of life. And by practicing self-compassion, you can begin to feel the gentle embrace of that connection. You are deserving of love, kindness, and understanding, not because of what you do, but simply because you are. Allow this truth to guide you toward a more compassionate, connected, and peaceful existence. Remember, you are never truly alone. And through self-compassion, you will rediscover your place in the world. The power of interconnectedness, embracing the oneness of all beings. One of the most profound teachings of Buddhism is the realization of interconnectedness. In the Heart Sutra, the Buddha expresses a timeless truth: form is emptiness. And emptiness is form, reminding us that all things, all beings, are inextricably linked. Nothing exists in isolation. This insight, simple yet profound, holds the key to dissolving the feeling of loneliness that so many of us experience. When we feel lonely, we often perceive ourselves as separate from others, from nature, and even from our own hearts. We view ourselves as individuals, disconnected from the world around us. This illusion of separateness is at the root of our suffering, for it feeds the belief that we are isolated, unimportant, and alone. But the teachings of the Buddha invite us to awaken to a different truth: we are not isolated. We are part of a vast, interconnected web of existence, where each being, each moment, and each breath is intricately linked. In this moment, allow yourself to pause and reflect on this deeper reality. Imagine yourself as part of a boundless network of life, a web of energy, consciousness, and compassion that stretches across the world. Each breath you take is connected to every other living being on this planet. The air that fills your lungs is the same air that nourishes the trees, the animals, and the people around you. This connection transcends time, space, and form. When we open ourselves to this understanding, the sense of isolation begins to dissolve. Instead of feeling alone, we feel a profound sense of unity with all that is. In this guided meditation, we will explore this powerful truth through visualization. Close your eyes and allow yourself to imagine your breath as part of a shared rhythm, a universal current of life. With every inhale, feel yourself drawing in the life force that connects all beings. With every exhale, release the illusion of separation and embrace the oneness that exists beneath the surface of reality. As you deepen your connection with the breath, visualize yourself as a single thread within a vast, intricate web. Each thread is unique, yet each is essential to the whole. You are a vital part of this interconnected tapestry, sharing the same energy, the same spirit, the same vitality as all beings in the universe. Feel the warmth of this connection, knowing that you are never truly alone. You are part of the boundless flow of life, forever interconnected with all that exists. This understanding of interconnectedness is a powerful antidote to loneliness. By recognizing that we are part of a greater whole, we can begin to transcend the illusion of separation and experience the deep peace that comes with knowing we are never isolated. In the embrace of this interconnectedness, we find solace, support, and a sense of belonging that transcends all boundaries. The teachings of the Buddha remind us that we are never truly alone. We are part of a vast, loving, interconnected world. And by recognizing this truth, we can move beyond feelings of isolation and into a space of deep connection, peace, and harmony. A story of healing through compassion. In Buddhist tradition, there is a powerful story of a monk who struggled with deep loneliness after the death of his master. He wandered from temple to temple, seeking solace but finding none. One day, he met an old woman who shared her own experience of grief and loneliness. Despite her hardships, she spoke with such kindness and compassion that the monk felt his heart begin to soften. The woman's compassion reminded him of the interconnectedness of all beings and the healing power of compassion. He realized that by reaching out to others, by offering love and understanding, he could begin to heal his own sense of isolation. This simple act of compassion allowed him to reconnect with the world and with his own heart. The power of letting go, a practice of release and freedom. Loneliness, as we often experience it, is not just an external condition. It is deeply tied to our attachments, our attachment to thoughts, emotions, and the stories we tell ourselves about being alone. The Buddha, in his profound wisdom, taught that attachment is the root of all suffering. We attach to ideas, to feelings, to people, and in doing so, we create a false sense of separation. When we become attached to the thought of loneliness, we strengthen the very thing that causes us pain. But here lies the freedom, through the practices of mindfulness and meditation. We have the power to let go. We have the ability to release the grip of attachment and break free from the cycle of isolation that binds us. This process of letting go isn't about forcing ourselves to ignore our feelings or pretending they don't exist. It's about acknowledging the feelings of loneliness without clinging to them. It's about creating the space to breathe and to heal. In this meditation, we will focus on the practice of releasing attachment. As you settle into a comfortable position, take a deep breath and begin to notice the feelings that are present within you, whether they are sadness, fear, or the heavy weight of loneliness. Allow these feelings to come and go without judgment, knowing that they are simply passing moments. Now, as you breathe in, invite acceptance. Invite the understanding that you are worthy of love and connection. With each exhale, release the thoughts, the emotions, and the self-judgments that fuel your sense of isolation. Let them dissolve into the air, knowing that they are not permanent. With every breath, you make more space for something new. You make space for healing, for peace, and for love to flow freely into your heart. Each moment of release is a moment of liberation, a moment where the walls of separation begin to crumble, and the expansive, interconnected nature of life is revealed. As you continue this practice, know that you are not alone in your journey. The process of letting go is one that we all walk together, in the shared experience of our human condition. There is deep connection, even in the quietest moments of solitude. By releasing attachment, we open ourselves to the truth that we are never truly alone. We are part of something greater, something vast, and something beautiful. Practical tips for coping with loneliness in daily life. In addition to the meditation practice, there are several practical steps we can take to address loneliness in our everyday lives. These practices align with Buddha's teachings on mindfulness and compassion and can help us build a deeper connection to ourselves and others. Cultivate gratitude. Start each day by acknowledging the things you are grateful for, even the small moments. Gratitude helps shift our focus from what is lacking to what is present. Practice loving kindness meditation. Send love and compassion to yourself and others. Begin by offering kindness to yourself. Then extend it to loved ones, acquaintances, and even those you may not get along with. This practice helps foster a sense of interconnectedness and empathy. Engage in acts of service. Helping others can create a sense of purpose and connection. By offering support to those in need, you begin to see that we are all interconnected in this shared human experience. Spend time in nature. Nature has a way of reminding us of the interconnectedness of all life. Spending time outdoors, observing the beauty of the natural world, can help you feel more grounded and connected. Conclusion: embracing connection and healing. In Buddhism, loneliness is not something to be avoided or feared, but rather something to be understood and transformed. By practicing mindfulness, embracing self-compassion, and recognizing our interconnectedness, we can transcend feelings of isolation and reconnect with the world and ourselves. The journey of overcoming loneliness is not an easy one, but it is a path of profound healing. With each moment of mindfulness, we step closer to a state of deep connection and peace. You are not alone. This realization is the key to unlocking the transformative power of connection and healing. Remember, as the Buddha taught, everything is impermanent, just as the clouds pass and the sun shines through. So too will moments of loneliness give way to moments of connection, understanding, and love.